Alright, so in this video I'm going to show you how to clean a carb. So I've just pulled this one off farm bike. So there's the carb boot, and under that's its reed valve, and I'll take those off as well and give them a clean and an inspection. But that's the carb, and this one is monumentally filthy. I mean, that's the intake side of the carb. There should be no grit in there whatsoever, so shame. This poor Scoot's had a rough life, and you can tell by the sheer filth it is most certainly in need of a clean. So what I'll do is I'll take off the auto choke. So there's two little Phillips headed screws there, and I'll take that off. I'll obviously take the float bowl out, give it a good clean. I'm also going to be rejetting this bike for a performance pipe and air filter. And while I'm there, I'll also take out the idle screw. I'll give that a good blasting, because at this point this poor carb is absolutely filthy. So I'll take out the idle screw, I'll also take out the air screw, give it a good clean as well. There are tiny little O-rings in there which need to be inspected as well while I'm here, so I'll give that a bit of a clean. But once they open, I'll also get some carb cleaner through those passages. Okay, so that's the auto choke, or the enricher as it's called. That's a bit of a worry, but I'll go in and inspect it and make sure it's all fine. There's two things to check for on this. The first thing is there's that little tiny seal underneath that plunger, or at least around the plunger. So these bikes are old, they're 20-30 years old now, and they will wear a little ring in there, and sometimes they just don't seal correctly. So that one actually doesn't have a ring, which I'm quite surprised with, but this may be an aftermarket one. Second thing is I'm going to connect it to a battery, and I want to ensure that it actually works. So as it gets hot, there's basically wax inside this black cylinder, and that plunger extends and actually seals it off. So the inverse is true when it's not working. So when the bike is cold, not getting power, the needle and that little boot retracts and obviously allows air and fuel to pass through. That is obviously to enrich the system. So I'll just make sure it's all working correctly and give it a good clean if it is. So this is my rig for testing different things on bikes. Actually, I just got an old security, I think it's an alarm or a gate motor battery, and I've got a little wire connected with some crocodile clips, and of course it's 12 volts, the same as a motorcycle system. So I'll just connect that to the enricher shortly, and we'll see if that little aluminium tube extends further than what it is currently. Okay, I've given it a few minutes, and you can see that that little plunger has extended down probably a good 5 mils. So that tells me it's working fine, which is good news. I'll give it a bloody good clean, and I'll continue with the rest of the carb. Alright, just taking the float bowl off. There's the 4 float little bolts, and unsurprisingly it is monumentally filthy in there. A huge amount of grit you can see on the float there as it reflects. So obviously the air filter was completely buggered, not doing its job. So this is going to be quite an in-depth clean. So that's your main jet there, center frame, and then you've got your idle jet center in the little tube, and that's your needle and seat. So I'm going to get in there, give that a good clean. I'll even give it a polish with an earbud and some metal polish and a drill to make sure that there's a nice kind of seating area. This carb is functioning as a factory intended, and you can see that pin that holds the float bowl in place. I'll have to press that out as well, give everything a really good going through, being mindful of that gasket that goes around the perimeter as well. Yeah, lots to do. Okay, so you've removed the float. That's the seat there with that. You can see that little C-shaped cleat that holds a little brass seat in place. So I'm not going to take that out and leave it in place. I'll just get a little earbud in there and spin it with the cordless drill to give it a nice clean mating surface, because this bike's really old and a lot of fuel and well, thankfully not two-stroke has been through there, but over time the fuel forms like a lacquer, and I want to get rid of that to ensure there's a nice area for the little seat, sorry, the needle to seat on. Right, next step is an earbud and a drill, and I've put a little bit of auto sol on the earbud. There we go, good old metal polish. And then the plan is to get into that little brass seat and give it a good whirl. Okay, so that's the result. It's quite filthy. I'll get some carb cleaner in there and just blast out the residual metal polish. Right, there's a little brass seat. Shiny. Wow, what a difference compared to where it was. Okay, bucket of bolts. Main jet, needle jet. I haven't cleaned those yet. I'm still going to drill them out. And that's the little needle. And some of the models have a little rubber teat on the tip of it, which this one obviously has. Some are just kind of plain aluminium. So I'll give it a nice, very gentle clean. I'll make sure that the float is also grit-free moving forward, and the bowl too. So that's the inside. Surprisingly good. There's a bit of grit in the bottom, but generally these have quite a dark orangey brown hue with all the kind of lacquer buildup. So someone has cleaned this at some point, although judging by the amount of muck here, maybe in about 1972, not sure. Okay, so some progress. I've since just drilled out the pilot and main. The pilot goes to a 60. Standard is a 52. It was a 50 at least. And then the main standard is a 72.5. Because this is getting a CRP exhaust and performance air filter, I find that a 110 main or a 115 main works pretty well. You could probably go a little leaner, if I'm honest, but we're up here in Johannesburg, so that's really, really high. And of course, air is thinner. Please be very mindful if you're faffing with jetting and you're at the coast. You need to be even richer, because you're going to burn holes through pistons before you know it. So if you're ever doing this, and if you're at the coast and you're unsure of your air ratio, start richer and go leaner. By no means take my word for it. This is what I do up country. You need to do what's good for your bike, and make no mistake, these suckers are all different. So be very, very cautious with jetting. Start rich, go lean. Okay, I'm not going to film all of this, but all of this horrible dirt, I'm just going to spray with some petrol, and then get it in there with a toothbrush, and make sure that this carb is as clean as it can be. So yeah, in a few minutes time it'll be clean. There's a nice clean float bowl. Little top tip: if you ever want to drain your float bowl, this 6mm Allen key, do not over tighten it. The very tip where it meets that little tap is tapered, and if you over tighten it, it actually splits the float bowl in half. So you can actually see that little nozzle at the bottom there. Well, I say the nozzle, that's the tip of that little bolt, and like I said, it's tapered, so you over tighten it, splits it, and time for a new carb. Gently does it. Alright, one sparkly clean carb. It was a bit of a faff, I'm not going to lie.